Hi, I'm coming by real quick today to say happy holidays, and we're going to get right into the video because there's a lot to cover and we're getting ready for the Easter Bunny over here. So I hope you enjoy, and I'll see you in a little bit. This week I needed to work on some unfinished paintings, and I thought I'd take that opportunity to show you a little bit of my process. These two canvases were given to me by a friend, and I decided to cover them and give them a new life. At this point, I had an idea of what I was going to do, but not 100%. So I just covered the canvas with lots of gesso and my favorite tissue papers. And then I added paint to blend everything in and allow some of what I collaged onto the canvas to show through. By the way, you'll see the format change here and there, and I'm going to leave it this way because if I change it, you can't see everything. But most of the video is in the correct format. And there's my best friend. I love him so much. So here I've started sketching and getting the face laid out on the canvas and adding color. This was really fun. The hair is always hard. I love doing eyes. That's my favorite part. I always save the little white spot, the reflection in the middle of the pupil, for last. Just seems to give it life. So just to go back a little bit, after I create the collage, I take a photo of it and crop it in my phone, and then I work in Procreate coming up with an idea for an image to paint over the collage, which is useful when I go to transfer it, because when I overlay the design on top of the photo of the collage, it's almost like a grid that a lot of muralists use to transfer their image to a wall. Here I am laying out my paint for the last day of these two paintings because I knew that I needed to get back into finishing up these paintings in my house. They're piling up. So I decided, okay, we're going to paint and also YouTube at the same time. So here you go. I'm preparing for the last day. And these are the brushes that I use only for oil paint. So the first part of the painting was acrylic, and I always end with a layer of oil. But these little Jerry O paintbrushes are so good. I'll put an affiliate link down in the description below. I need to get one set for acrylic too, but I love these brushes and I take very good care of them, even though they're really not expensive at all. So if you're just starting out, this is a great set of brushes to use only for oil or only for acrylic. I keep my brushes separate, although I've mixed them up a couple of times and I really haven't had a problem, but anyway, you're supposed to keep them separate. So I'm gonna speed this up a little bit to get through the painting part because we kind of have two projects in one this week. And also, when you speed up your painting process, you look like you know what you're doing, and it looks a lot better. So here is one of the reasons that I like to do diptychs, triptychs. As you can see, I'm putting my hand on the canvas, and I'm always wiping oil off. I'm so used to working with acrylic. I've only been working with oil for a little while now, and I always put my hand in it. So it's good to go back and forth between two paintings. And another great reason for working on two canvases is that you're only mixing or three. I've done triptychs too. And what do you call one with four canvases? I don't even know. But you're only mixing your paint once. I also like that when you're working on two very similar paintings, that I learn a lot more and quicker. So when you learn something on one and then you have to wait for it to dry and you move on to the one that's next to it that's similar, you can start to incorporate those things that you've learned. So I seem to move ahead quicker when I stick to the same style for a little bit. So they're done, and I'm really happy with them. I just have to touch up some of the edges and then seal them after the oil paint dries. And here are my final pictures. You can see they're pretty big. So now we're going to move on to the next part of my process. These are the sources that I created. You see in the background underneath them is my original collage that I did on the canvas. And then I take pictures of the painting when I'm finished and create another collage. So for each of my paintings, I put a collage in my collage book. And I use the same tissue papers for the collage in my book that I used for the original painting. I don't always do that, but I thought that was a cool idea. And I also get to use up some of these little tiny pieces that were left over. I love using everything up and not having anything end up in the trash. So I've taped down 2 pages from my book, and if you missed the explanation, I got somewhere, I can't remember where it came from, a huge book. It's kind of like a directory for yachties, I guess. Some marine thing that I ended up with. And there's actually some really good pictures in it, but I decided to make the book a collage because it had a really cool cover on it, and you'll see that eventually. But as I was creating the pages, the gesso got on the spiral binder that holds all the pages together. So I just unscrewed the spiral binder, and I'm going to figure out how to put the book back together later after I'm done with all the pages. But as you can see here, I'm putting gesso down and paint, and I wanted to kind of create the same type of collage that I put on the original canvas. Also, you'll notice in these clips of me creating this collage that I'm having terrible lighting issues this week. But of course, at the very end, as I was playing around taking the final photos of the collage here when I was finished, I think I figured it out. So the next video should have a little bit better lighting. They're not kidding when they say the best way to learn how to have a YouTube channel is to just jump in and do it. I really do learn something different every video that I create. It's been really great the last few weeks to look back every week on what I've done and be able to say I learned something new. And while in the beginning it seems a little overwhelming because there are so many things to learn, it really does come one thing at a time, one step at a time. Planting seeds, laying bricks. I've heard them all in the last few weeks, but it really is true. So if you're thinking about starting a YouTube channel, I highly recommend it, even if you're just going to create a video journal of the things that you learn, no matter what you're interested in. It's definitely worth starting. It forces you to look at yourself in a different way, and it also, for me, has helped me figure out my process. When you have a little bit of a timeline that you want to stick to, your workflow starts to develop and show itself. It's a bit of a juggling act to learn how to run a YouTube channel and stay on a schedule and still do all the things that I have to do throughout the day. But it's funny because when there's something that I really want to do, it forces me to get the things that I don't want to do done. And then I end up with all this extra time to do the fun things. When in the beginning I thought, oh, I have no time for this. And a lot of people ask me, how do you do all the things that you do? It's because I love doing them. Who said that? When you love what you do, you never have to work a day in your life? Yeah, I want to make this my full-time thing that I do in my life. I'm going to speed this process up a little bit so that we can get to the next step. But I can't wait to finish this collage book so I can do a flip through and you can see all of the collages that I put together. I'm purposely saving a few so you have something new to look at. And I'm really excited to go back and see all of the pieces that I've done. There are a couple of collabs that I had with Skylar, and she's excited to show her creations on camera. And by the way, we've created a monster because she now thinks that she is a YouTube superstar. So if you're still with me at this point, drop a hello Skylar in the comments below. She would love it. So I'm finishing up this part of the collage, and the next thing that I like to do is to take a picture of the background before I put anything on it, because I love printing these out to use in other collages. I keep a folder of them on my phone, and occasionally I will transfer them to an external drive. But this way I have lots of really cool textured abstract pieces that I can use in other collages. And I don't have to worry about copyright. And what's cool, sometimes you see that there are the wrinkles in there, the waves on the paper, but it's just from the printer. So they come out really cool in backgrounds. Here I am just putting down some more gesso to blend in those pieces that I've glued down. And most of what I glued down is going to get covered. But I just go around the edges and allow some of the pieces that were glued down to show through. Sometimes this is hard for me because although a lot of people say you have to just not worry about where you're putting pieces of paper that you put down for a collage because it's going to get covered up and won't make much of a difference, I enjoy that process of putting things down on the paper, and sometimes I don't want to cover them up. But I'm getting better at that because it really does look cool when you have a smooth page that is blended well with just a few cool things peeking through. And you can't see it through the camera, but more things are showing through than it seems. So now I'm just tearing up those source photos and the photos of my painting and figuring out where I want them to go. I named the two paintings that I finished here Sister Language because it reminded me of the last page of my journal from last week. And I can't remember what the quote was, but it was something about a language they only understood. Between daughters or friends, you only have to look at each other and you could just tell what they're thinking. So as I was finishing the last day of these two paintings, I was working on the eyes and it just reminded me of that quote. So I decided to roll with that theme, and there are lots of eyes in this collage. I wasn't sure how to pull it all together, but I decided that these streams of thoughts, I guess, going from one set of eyes to another would be cool. So I used a fan brush and a little of my gesso and created what kind of looks like ribbons to connect everything together. Up close and personal, this looks a little bit like streams of smoke. But I think it needs a little more of a highlight, which really makes me happy because that means I get to pull my pens out. But I'm going to try very hard to control myself and not overdo it. I want to keep this very simple because there's already a lot going on. So I'm just going to take my white Posca pen out and go along some of the lines that the gesso made with the brush and make it look more like it's that floating, streaming smoke. And I'm thinking maybe a couple of quotes written really small along those ribbons of thought. But I'm not going to do it. I'm going to keep it simple. I'm not going to write words. I really want to though, but I'll tell you a little trick. So when this happens and I really want to add something, but I also want to keep it simple, this would be one of those times that I scan or take a photo and print these 2 pages out and do a whole new thing with the words and play around with it and maybe turn it into a different collage. It just goes on and on and on. So now you see how I go from canvas to collage to canvas back to collage, and it'll keep on going forever. And I can't keep my husband from pressure cleaning and playing music outside of every window of my home right now, so I'm probably gonna go now. I'll leave you with a couple of photos of the final paintings and a close-up of the collage. I hope you enjoyed that video. It was a really fun one to do. I love to see my work go from a collage to a painting and then back to a collage again. And I love to keep track of my paintings in my art journals. So I'll be talking more about my workflow in future videos when I'm used to doing this a little bit more, but I'm learning and I'm having a great time. So in the meantime, thanks for watching. Hey, what are you doing here? What do you have to say? YouTube superstar?
YouTube superstar.
Well, from our family to your family, we hope you have a happy Easter. Say happy Easter.
Happy Easter.
Bye.
Bye.
I think that was good.